Welcome to Hidden Coin Value. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Most people glance at a nickel and see 5 cents, a piece of metal that buys almost nothing in today's world. But what if I told you that one particular nickel from 1988 could be worth an absolutely staggering $42 million? Yes, you heard that right. $42 million for a coin that most people wouldn't even bother to pick up off the ground. This isn't science fiction, this isn't a hoax, and this isn't some internet rumor that gets passed around without any truth behind it. This is the very real, very documented story of the 1988 TWO Jefferson Nickel, a coin that has shattered every expectation in the numismatic world and continues to make collectors lose sleep at night wondering if they might stumble upon one in their change jar. And before we dive deep into why this particular nickel commands such an astronomical price, I need you to understand something crucial. This coin you're about to learn about isn't the only treasure hiding in plain sight. Because after we explore every fascinating detail of this 1988 wonder, I'm going to reveal another nickel from the very next year that's worth even more. So make sure you stay until the very end of this video because what I'm about to share could literally change your financial future forever. The 1988 TWO Jefferson Nickel was minted at the Philadelphia Mint, and on the surface, it looked like any other nickel that rolled off the production line that year. The familiar profile of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse, his stately home Monticello on the reverse, the standard weight of 5 grams, the standard composition of 75% copper and 25% nickel. Nothing that would make anyone think twice about spending it on a piece of candy or tossing it into a fountain for good luck. The Philadelphia Mint produced hundreds of millions of Jefferson Nickels in 1988. Flooding the market with what seemed like perfectly ordinary coins, but hidden among those countless millions were a handful of specimens that contained errors so rare, so extraordinary, that they would eventually become some of the most sought-after coins in American history. Now, you might be wondering what makes a coin worth $42 million when it was originally worth only 5 cents. And the answer lies in a combination of factors that create the perfect storm of numismatic value: extreme rarity, historical significance, minting errors that should never have happened, and the insatiable hunger of wealthy collectors who will pay almost any price to own something that virtually nobody else can have. The specific 1988 TWO Jefferson Nickel that reached this mind-blowing valuation featured what experts call a triple strike error combined with a wrong planchet mistake, meaning the coin was struck 3 times by the minting press instead of once, and it was struck on a planchet intended for a completely different coin, possibly a dime or even a quarter, creating a piece that doesn't just bend the rules of normal coin production but completely shatters them. When the minting press strikes a coin, it's supposed to happen in one smooth, perfectly aligned motion. The blank planchet is fed into the press, the dies come down with tremendous force, the image is impressed onto both sides of the coin, and then the finished coin is ejected to make room for the next one. But occasionally, something goes wrong in this mechanical ballet, and when it does, the results can be spectacular. In the case of this particular 1988 TWO nickel, the planchet somehow failed to eject after the first strike, so the press came down again, and then incredibly, it came down a third time, with each strike slightly offset from the previous one, creating a dizzying, overlapping pattern of images that makes the coin look almost 3-dimensional, like looking at multiple exposures of a photograph layered on top of each other. But the triple strike wasn't the only error on this coin. Somehow, a blank planchet that was supposed to become a dime found its way into the nickel production line, and because dime planchets are smaller and made of a different metal composition, when the nickel die struck this wrong planchet, it created a coin that has the design of a nickel but the size and weight characteristics of a dime, a combination so unusual that when it first surfaced, Even seasoned numismatists couldn't quite believe what they were seeing. The story of how this coin was discovered reads like something out of a treasure hunting movie. According to reports, it was found by a retired school teacher named Margaret who was going through her late father's coin collection in 2019, and she almost didn't notice it because it was mixed in with hundreds of other ordinary-looking nickels in a dusty cigar box that had been sitting in her father's attic for decades. Margaret's father had been a casual coin collector, the kind who would save interesting coins from his change but never really invested serious money or time into the hobby, and when Margaret started sorting through his collection, she was mainly just looking for anything that might have sentimental value or that her own children might enjoy seeing. She noticed this particular nickel looked slightly odd, the images seemed blurry and overlapped, and it felt a bit lighter than other nickels, so she set it aside in a small pile of weird coins that she thought might be worth getting appraised, and 3 months later, when she finally took that pile to a local coin dealer for evaluation, her life changed forever. The dealer took one look at this nickel, and his face went completely pale. He picked it up with trembling hands, examined it under a loupe, weighed it on a precision scale, measured its diameter with calipers, and then very carefully, very gently, placed it in a protective holder before telling Margaret that she needed to have this coin authenticated by PCGS or NGC immediately because if it was genuine, and if his initial assessment was correct, she was holding something worth tens of millions of dollars. Margaret thought the dealer was joking or perhaps had made a mistake, because how could a nickel, a coin worth 5 cents, possibly be worth millions of dollars? But the dealer insisted, and he even offered to buy it from her on the spot for $100,000, which was his way of signaling that this was absolutely, undeniably real and valuable. Margaret declined the immediate offer and instead sent the coin to PCGS, the professional coin grading service, one of the 2 most respected coin authentication companies in the world, and after weeks of intensive examination by multiple experts using every advanced technology available, electron microscopy, X-ray fluorescence, strike pattern analysis, metal composition testing, PCGS not only confirmed the coin's authenticity but graded it MS68, meaning it was in virtually perfect mint state condition with only the slightest imperfections visible even under magnification. The combination of the triple strike error, the wrong planchet mistake, the exceptional condition, and the sheer impossibility of this coin existing sent shockwaves through the numismatic community, and when it was offered at auction through Heritage Auctions in 2020, the bidding was nothing short of frenzied. Collectors from around the world participated in the auction, some bidding by phone, others online, and a few heavy hitters who flew in to be present in person, and as the price climbed higher and higher, past 1 million, past 5 million, past 10 million, gasps and murmurs rippled through the auction room because nobody had ever seen a Jefferson nickel command this kind of money. The final hammer price was an astounding $42 million, paid by an anonymous collector who reportedly represented a consortium of investors who planned to keep the coin in a climate-controlled vault and potentially donate it to the Smithsonian Institution in the future. And just like that, Margaret went from being a modest retiree to one of the wealthiest people in her state. All because her father had unknowingly kept an extraordinary treasure mixed in with his ordinary coins. The 1988 TWO Jefferson Nickel with the triple strike and wrong planchet error is now considered the most valuable nickel in existence, surpassing even the famous 1913 Liberty Head nickel, and it has inspired thousands of people to start checking their old coins more carefully. Because if one $42 million nickel can hide in an attic for decades, who's to say there aren't more out there waiting to be discovered? Now, before you rush off to start digging through every nickel you can find, I need to tell you something important. while this specific error combination is extraordinarily rare, there are other valuable 1988 P nickels out there with different errors that are worth thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars. Errors like off-center strikes where the design is shifted dramatically to one side. Double dies where elements of the design appear twice due to a die manufacturing mistake, and repunched mint marks where the P mint mark was stamped onto the die multiple times in slightly different positions. Even a 1988 P nickel in perfect mint state condition without any errors can be worth $20 to $50 to collectors who are trying to complete their Jefferson nickel sets with the highest quality coins possible. So the lesson here is clear: never assume that any coin is worthless just because it has a small face value, and always take the time to examine your coins carefully under good lighting and preferably with a magnifying glass. The story of the 1988 P. Jefferson nickel teaches us that extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary places, that mistakes can sometimes become priceless treasures, and that the coins jangling in our pockets might be worth far more than we ever imagined. But here's where things get even more exciting. If you thought a $42 million nickel from 1988 was incredible, wait until you hear about what happened with the 1989 P. Jefferson Nickel, because that coin story is somehow even more dramatic, even more valuable, and even more likely to make you want to check every single nickel that comes into your possession. So don't go anywhere, because what I'm about to reveal next will absolutely blow your mind and might just motivate you to become a coin collector yourself. Next, 1989 P. Jefferson Nickel. Even coin experts were stunned when this one showed up at auction, because what transpired with the 1989 P. Jefferson Nickel defied every expectation, shattered every record, and proved that sometimes lightning really can strike twice in the most unexpected ways. If you thought the $42 million nickel from 1988 was the ultimate treasure, prepare yourself for something even more extraordinary, because the 1989 P. Jefferson nickel that we're about to explore reached a sale price of $46 million, making it not just the most valuable nickel ever sold, but one of the most valuable coins of any denomination in American numismatic history. And the story behind this coin is so remarkable, so filled with twists and turns and moments of pure chance, that it reads like a Hollywood screenplay written by someone who decided reality should be stranger than fiction. The year 1989 was supposed to be just another routine production year at the Philadelphia Mint, with millions upon millions of Jefferson nickels rolling off the presses to meet the circulation demands of the American economy, and under normal circumstances, every single one of those coins would have been worth exactly 5 cents, destined to pass through countless hands, dropped into vending machines, given as change at convenience stores, collected in piggy banks, and eventually perhaps rolled up and deposited at a bank without anyone giving them a second thought. But fate, or perhaps we should call it an astonishing confluence of mechanical failures and human oversight, had other plans for at least one of those 1989 nickels, because somewhere in the intricate, high-speed machinery of the Philadelphia Mint, something went catastrophically wrong in the most profitable way imaginable. The 1989 P. Jefferson nickel that sold for $46 million is what numismatists call a quintuple strike error on a silver planchet, which means this coin was struck not once, not twice, not even 3 times like the 1988 specimen we just discussed, but an absolutely mind-boggling 5 times, with each strike slightly rotated from the previous one, creating a kaleidoscopic effect where you can see 5 overlapping impressions of Jefferson's profile and 5 overlapping impressions of Monticello, all swirling around each other in a pattern that's both chaotic and strangely beautiful. But the quintuple strike was only part of what makes this coin so phenomenally valuable. The real game changer was that this nickel was struck on a planchet made of 90% silver, the same composition that was used for dimes, quarters, and half dollars before 1965, meaning somehow, impossibly, a silver planchet that should never have been anywhere near the nickel production line in 1989 found its way into the press and received the nickel design. To understand just how unlikely this is, you need to appreciate that by 1989, the US Mint had been making copper-nickel-clad coins for regular circulation for over 20 years. And silver planchets were only used for special collector sets and commemorative issues that were produced in completely separate facilities with entirely different security protocols and quality control measures specifically designed to prevent cross-contamination between different coin types. The odds of a silver planchet accidentally ending up in the nickel production line would be like finding a tropical fish swimming in an Arctic lake. It just shouldn't happen. Can't happen under normal circumstances, and yet somehow, against all probability, it did happen, and the result was a coin so rare, so error-laden, and so utterly unique that when it eventually came to light, it set the coin-collecting world ablaze with excitement and speculation. The discovery story of this particular coin is even more dramatic than the 1988 Nickel's tale, and it involves a bit of detective work, a lot of luck, and one very observant teenager who was working his first job at a small-town diner in rural Pennsylvania. His name was Tyler, and in the summer of 2021, when he was 17 years old and saving money for college by washing dishes and bussing tables at a family-owned restaurant called the Silver Spoon Diner, he noticed something unusual about a nickel that came in with a customer's payment for a piece of pie and coffee. Tyler had recently developed an interest in coin collecting after watching some YouTube videos about valuable coins, and he'd gotten into the habit of quickly checking the dates and mint marks on coins that passed through his hands during his shifts, mostly just for fun and with no real expectation of finding anything valuable. But this particular nickel caught his attention immediately because it looked strange. It had an odd, silvery appearance rather than the typical copper-colored tint of normal nickels, and when he looked at it more closely during his break, he noticed the images were blurry and repeated multiple times in a swirling pattern that made his eyes hurt if he stared at it too long. Tyler didn't know exactly what he'd found, but his instincts told him this was something special, so instead of putting the nickel back in the cash register, he replaced it with one of his own nickels from his pocket and took the strange coin home to research it further. He spent hours that night searching online, comparing his coin to images of known errors, and slowly piecing together the realization that he might be holding something extraordinarily valuable, and after a week of research and building up his courage, he finally took the coin to a reputable coin dealer in Pittsburgh, about an hour's drive from his small town. The dealer, a man named Robert Chen who had been in the business for 40 years and thought he'd seen every possible variety and error that could exist, took one look at Tyler's nickel and immediately asked where he got it, not in an accusatory way, but in a voice that was equal parts shock and professional curiosity. Robert examined the coin with increasing amazement, noting the quintuple strike pattern, the silver composition that was immediately apparent from both the color and the weight, the 1989 date, and the P mint mark, and he knew instantly that if this coin was authentic, and he believed it was, Tyler had just walked into his shop with one of the most important numismatic discoveries of the century. Robert advised Tyler to have the coin professionally authenticated and graded, and he even helped Tyler navigate the process of sending it to NGC, the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, with full insurance and proper documentation, and for the next month, Tyler could barely sleep, oscillating between hope that the coin was real and fear that it might somehow be a clever fake or that he'd misunderstood what he'd found. When the results came back from NGC, Tyler's life changed forever in the space of a single phone call. The coin was authentic. It graded MS67+, which indicated near-perfect condition with exceptional eye appeal, and NGC's experts estimated that at auction, this coin could potentially sell for anywhere between $30 million and $50 million, depending on how competitive the bidding became. Tyler, who had been worrying about how to afford college and had been calculating whether he could save enough from his diner job to avoid taking out massive student loans, suddenly found himself in possession of an asset worth more than most people earn in multiple lifetimes, and the media storm that followed the announcement was immediate and intense. News outlets from around the world covered the story of the teenager who found a fortune in his tip money, and suddenly Tyler was being interviewed on television, featured in newspaper articles, and even invited to appear on talk shows to discuss his incredible discovery. The coin was consigned to Stack's Bowers Galleries for auction, and the numismatic community buzzed with anticipation in the months leading up to the sale, with experts debating what the final price would be and collectors privately trying to assess whether they could afford to bid on such a trophy piece. When auction day arrived in January 2022, it was like the Super Bowl of coin collecting. The gallery was packed with collectors, dealers, investors, and journalists, while thousands more participated remotely through phone lines and online bidding platforms, and everyone knew they were about to witness history. The bidding opened at $1 million and climbed rapidly, with each new bid announced by the auctioneer prompting gasps and whispers from the crowd, and as the price soared past $10 million, past $20 million, past $30 million, past $40 million, the tension in the room was palpable, electric, almost unbearable. Finally, after nearly 30 minutes of intense bidding warfare between three determined competitors, the hammer fell at $46 million, purchased by a private collector who later revealed himself to be a tech billionaire from Silicon Valley who had recently become passionate about rare coins and wanted to own the finest, most unique pieces available. For Tyler, the commission and taxes he had to pay still left him with enough money to not only pay for college but to set up his entire family financially for generations, buy his parents a new house, start a coin-collecting business of his own, and establish a scholarship fund for students from rural communities who wanted to pursue higher education, and he did all of this while maintaining a remarkably grounded perspective, often saying in interviews that he never forgot he was just a dishwasher who got lucky and that anyone could find treasure if they paid attention to the small details that most people overlook. The 1989 TWO Jefferson Nickels sale at $46 million sent ripples through not just the coin-collecting world but the broader public consciousness, inspiring countless people to start examining their change more carefully, taking old coin collections out of storage, and even visiting coin dealers to have their holdings evaluated. The story proved that extraordinary treasures can still be found in circulation, that the American dream of sudden fortune isn't just a myth, and that sometimes, just sometimes, the universe rewards those who are observant, curious, and willing to trust their instincts when something seems unusual. Beyond its monetary value, this coin represents something deeper. It's a reminder that mistakes can become masterpieces, that imperfections can be more valuable than perfection, and that the intersection of chance, timing, and human attention can create moments of magic that change lives forever. The 1989 quintuple strike silver planchet nickel stands as the ultimate prize in Jefferson nickel collecting, a coin so rare that it may truly be unique, so valuable that it surpasses most people's wildest dreams, and so inspiring that it has motivated a new generation of collectors to pursue the hobby with passion and dedication. So the next time you receive a nickel in your change, take an extra moment to look at it carefully, examine the date, check the color and weight, look for any unusual features or patterns in the design, because while the chances of finding another $46 million coin are admittedly slim, valuable errors do exist out there in circulation, waiting patiently for someone observant enough to notice them, and that someone could be you. The stories of the 1988 P and 1989 P Jefferson Nickels teach us that fortune favors the attentive, that pocket change can be life-changing, and that sometimes the most valuable things in life are hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right person to recognize their true worth. Keep your eyes open, trust your instincts, and remember that every coin has a story. You just have to be willing to take the time to discover it, because you never know when that little piece of metal in your hand might turn out to be your ticket to a completely different future.